Evolution is one of the staples of today's world. It means changes over a period of time. It can apply to everything, starting from dinosaurs evolving into birds, to fish evolving into octopus. One of the core mechanics of Pokémon games is evolution. Given enough love and training, you can grow your favorite pocket monster into a stronger one. However, Pokémon themselves are not the only thing that evolves. From 1996 till at least Generation 6, the whole franchise has been evolving exponentially. Pokémon games always received major updates from generation to generation and jumping into more powerful consoles. Graphics and animations have been upgraded, there were some tweaks to the battling system, and most importantly, a bunch of new creatures were introduced. But if there is one thing that's the most overlooked, it's their cries. Every Pokémon has its own voice, just like animals do in real life. We can hear them every time they appear on screen, whether it's a wild Pokémon or when we release our own. If we catch a Pokémon, we can also check their cry in the Pokédex. However, with every new console and hardware, they will always have some differences. So in today's video, we're gonna see how they were changed in every generation. Without getting too technical. We begin just like the first generation of Pokémon began 24 years ago, on one of the most famous handhelds of all time, Nintendo Game Boy, as well as Generation 2 on the Game Boy Color. Because their sound systems are nearly identical, they may have slight differences in the speakers, but in this video we focus on how the game itself generates the sounds. So for the sake of consistent quality, I'm using the most accurate emulation possible. Generations 1 and 2 use what's commonly called an 8-bit system, or a chiptune. What that means is that it utilizes the square wave sounds. However, before I can truly start explaining, we need to take a quick lesson of understanding a spectrogram. Spectrogram is a visual representation of a sound. It has three axes: the length of the recording, the amount of frequencies, and the third axis is the brightness of the spectrogram. The length of the recording is self-explanatory. The amount of frequencies in simple words are how crisp the sound quality is. For example, this is a recording with normal frequencies. This is a recording without higher frequencies. And this is a recording without lower frequencies. This is directly linked to the third brightness axis, which is just the volume of the sound. Dimmer the spectrogram, quieter the sound. You can compare it to how topography works. Those are the very basics to understand what's going on in this video and changes in Pokémon cries. So back to the square wave. It is one of the most basic, not to say primitive ways to make sounds that make sense. It had to be that way so everything could fit into 1 MB cartridge. To understand how it works in greater detail, let's take a look at its spectrogram. This is a sine wave, the most basic sound possible. Let's set it to 1000 Hz, or 1 kHz. It sounds like this. And this is the same 1000 kHz, but in square wave. As you probably noticed, the square wave has those lines above it. Those are called harmonics, and are an integer multiple of the base frequency. As I said, I'm not going to get too technical, so all you have to know is that the louder those frequencies are, the higher the sound quality is. Those harmonics can theoretically extend to infinity. However, the human hearing limit is around 20,000 Hz. My personal is somewhere between 1700 and 1800 Hz. In reality, we need at least 15,000 Hz to be considered high quality. Pokémon cries in Generation 1 and Generation 2 are just basically that, a compilation of many square wave sounds played very quickly, with some noise generated over it. Both square waves and noise are not getting quieter the higher the frequency goes, so the true limit in their quality is personalized. Jumping into 3rd generation on the Game Boy Advance system, things are getting a bit more interesting. The sound system of Game Boy Advance has the same 4 chiptune channels in order to be backwards compatible with the previous Game Boy games, so it is still able to produce square waves. However, now it has 2 additional digital to analog sound channels that can play direct sound. What that means, in theory you could play a regular sound just like from your phone right now, but in a bit worse quality overall. Since we still need to fit all the sounds into 60 MB cartridge, all the sounds must be heavily compressed. Nonetheless, this still allowed developers to make Pokémon cries far more realistic, like real animals. As shown on the spectrograms, they look completely different now, with lower and mid frequencies being louder and getting quieter in the higher ones, to get louder noise in the highest frequencies. But how does it translate to cries from Generation 1? Well, the cries themselves remained unchanged, but they were processed the same way like the new ones on this hardware. Now moving on to Generation 4 and 5. which were on the entire family of the Nintendo DS's. However, their sound systems aren't significantly different. Once again, Nintendo DS is capable of playing direct sound, now in better quality just like an MP3 player. The new software also altered the way Pokémon Cries were played. Now Pokémon Cries from generations 4 and 5 could sound even more realistic and clean due to even smaller amount of compression. Now the frequency range gets quieter most smoothly as it's going up, and then it gets louder again. Both generations use the exact same sound output and way the game is processing Pokémon Cries. Unlike Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS does not have a chiptune output, so all 8-bit sounds had to be put in the game as separate files. This made a small differences between a true chiptune sound and the ones programmed into the games. We can clearly hear the difference with the GB sounds item in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and with Pokémon Cries from first two generations. By comparing two spectrograms of the same cry, we can clearly hear and see the differences. And now the moment everybody has been waiting for. Generation 6 was a remaster of everything: graphics, animations and sound. Now, Nintendo 3DS family and Switch have the most modern Pokémon generations. The compression of the sound files is now barely noticeable, and when it comes to Pokémon Cries, as we all know, they have been redone from scratch to sound even more realistic and, most importantly, are free from compressions and limitations of old hardware. Their spectrograms look better than ever, and they cap out at around 16,000 Hz, which is close to the limit of the human hearing. And this is where it stands today, and probably will till the end of the Pokémon franchise, because there isn't really much that could be changed. So this was the evolution of Pokémon Cries throughout the generations. They started as a pile of square waves in generations 1 and 2, with all the frequencies being equally loud. Then in generation 3, their volume has been changed so lower frequencies were much louder and there was more noise overall. Then in generations 4 and 5, cries were much more clear and their volume has been altered once again. And then finally they have been completely remastered to sound as realistic as possible with keeping the spirit of the originals. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribe to my channel. I try to make various videos that can hopefully entertain you. That's all from me for today. See you later.